Hey, I'm Tobias Wilhelm, business coach and consultant, and this is part two of starting your own business. As I said before, this is part of a class that I actually do in several places. The full startup class basically has like all these little steps from idea to concept, and it goes through everything from consumables and payroll and inventory. For this is the condensed down version to just give you a taste of what you need to do to start your own business. Today we're going to start with location. Of course, not every business needs a location. I think that's very important to note. Some businesses you can pretty much run from anywhere with just a laptop and a phone. Other businesses you really have to have at least a location to do your stuff, whether it's you're baking cupcakes or you're running a restaurant. Obviously, you need to have a physical location to do that. In many states, it's not legal to actually run a food business out of your house, for example, or to have foot traffic at your house. So you want to make sure you check all your regulations, your zoning, your fire codes, because it's for your own safety and it's for the safety of your customers to make sure that nobody gets hurt while you're running a business out of your home. So you definitely want to check, and you want to check ahead of time before you start. Because I've seen where people put commercial kitchens in their homes and then found out that, zoning doesn't really allow for that. Or they put a bunch of money into remodeling something that is not even zoned or feasible for doing what they want to do. So you don't want to lose money. You want to be sure that you understand all the rules before you start playing the game. If you do need a physical location, you want to figure out, location is really everything. And you want to figure out if you need foot traffic or if you're a destination business. Sometimes we see these businesses where it's like, okay, so there has a business been there, 10 other people have tried, and you're number 11, and you're like, oh, I can do this. The other 10 just didn't know what they were doing. And, sometimes it's a terrible location. There's a reason why the other 10 didn't make it. So you want to think that through. Now, of course, the other part of that is location also can mean advantages. Sometimes there's incentives by either, your municipality or your state or something where it's like, okay, so if you're in an area that is depressed or if you're an area that needs more jobs, you might actually be able to get certain incentives, utility incentives, labor incentives, tax incentives, just for locating in an area where these exist and where you can actually make a difference. So that's something to check into. Product development is next. You want to go through and be aware of what you're selling, how much it's costing you, how much the hard cost is to produce something, what we call cost of goods, how much labor goes into producing something. And then, there's usually some magic number that is an industry average, how much profit you end up making. And then out of that, you get a sales price. And you have to make sure that the sales price is competitive. You want to be aware of what people buying and why they're buying it. You want to be aware of who they are, your target market, whether they look at it as a luxury good or as a necessity that they absolutely have to have. And you want to think through how you're selling your product. Is it sold online? Is it something that people come into your store for? Is it something that they can order through the mail, on the phone, and so forth? So you want to make sure that all your sales channels are covered. Financing is always a big thing in business, and I hear a lot from people that say that access to capital is a huge problem for small businesses. So you want to, if you need money to start your business, you want to figure out where it's coming from, whether you have friends or a rich aunt or whatever it might be. Now remember that ultimately when somebody invests in your business and they do it as a silent partner, usually the one thing that they're not is silent. So once somebody invests business, they have a feeling that they actually get to have a say in whatever else. And remember that taking an investment is kind of like getting married, and a lot of times the only way to break it up is with an attorney and a big check. So you want to think through all of this, and sometimes it's not a good idea to take money for business investments from friends and family, because at the end of it they may no longer be friends or family. A lot of businesses you can bootstrap. I started my own business basically with enough money to buy the first computer, and I made a profit, and then I had enough money to buy 2 computers and basically sort of leveraged my way up. That's certainly a possibility that a lot of people have, again, depending on the business. But you want to make sure if you're bootstrapping, you just have to be aware, okay, so this is how much it's going to take. You want to have a marketing plan. You want to be aware of this is where I'm going to advertise my business, where I'm going to talk about my business. Number one is always traditional versus social media. Traditional is the side where you have newspapers, radio, TV, you know, people still do outdoor advertising. The yellow pages have pretty much died, so that's no longer a thing, unless you're like in the nursing home business. But, you know, then there's social media, which basically is your Facebook, your Instagram, Snapchat, and most of the time there's a new social media channel coming out on a fairly regular basis. And you have to decide if they're for you, if you want to utilize them or not. You certainly don't have to be everywhere. If anybody tells you you have to absolutely be in one place, that's usually not true either. So, you know, your business may not do well on Facebook, or your business may not do well on LinkedIn. It's totally up to you. You have to decide where your market is and then basically go with it. Don't forget your biggest marketing opportunity are your existing customers. Whether they're in your store or they've done business with you before, those are people, they already know you're awesome and they can help promote your brand and be your ambassador and tell people how awesome you are. So that's the things we want to talk about today. There's of course much more. We'll probably wrap this up in a third video and talk about some of the other stuff. But in the meantime, if you have any questions, I'm here.